The Galactic Council station floated in the darkness of space like a jewel made of light. It was the largest structure ever built by any species in the known universe. Millions of beings from hundreds of different worlds lived and worked there. For 3,000 years, it had been the center of peace and cooperation between all the intelligent races of the galaxy. Ambassador Yuna stood near the large window of her small office. She was one of the few humans allowed on the station. Her job was simple but important. She represented Earth in the lower council meetings. She spoke for a planet that most aliens considered primitive and dangerous. Earth was what they called a quarantined world. Humans were not welcome in galactic society. Yuna looked at her reflection in the glass. She was tired. Her black hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and there were dark circles under her eyes. She had spent the last 12 hours arguing with alien diplomats who did not want to listen. They never wanted to listen when a human spoke. "You should rest," said a voice behind her. Yuna turned around. Her assistant, a young man named Dohan, was standing in the doorway. He was holding 2 cups of the terrible coffee substitute that the station provided. Real coffee was hard to get this far from Earth. "I will rest when the council agrees to lift the trade restrictions," Yuna said. She took one of the cups and drank from it. The liquid was warm, but had no real taste. "Until then, I have work to do." Dohan walked into the office and sat down on a small chair. He was younger than Yuna by almost 10 years. He had come to the station full of hope and excitement. Now, after 2 years of being treated like a second-class citizen, that excitement had faded. "The council will never change their minds," Dohan said quietly. "They are afraid of us. They have been afraid of humans since the first contact." Yuna knew he was right. When humans first discovered faster-than-light travel, they had expected to find friends among the stars. Instead, they found a galaxy that was terrified of them. The other species had been watching Earth for a long time. They had seen the wars, the weapons, and the violence. They decided that humans were too dangerous to be part of their peaceful society. For 200 years, Earth had been isolated. Humans were allowed to travel through certain parts of space, but they could not join the Galactic Council. They could not trade freely. They could not settle on new worlds. They were prisoners in their own small corner of the galaxy. "Fear can change," Yuna said. "It just takes time." Before Dohan could respond, the entire station shook. The lights flickered. Alarms began to sound throughout the corridors. Yuna grabbed the edge of her desk to keep from falling. "What was that?" Dohan shouted. Yuna ran to the window. What she saw made her blood turn cold. Ships were appearing in the space around the station. Hundreds of them. They were black and twisted, like pieces of broken metal floating in the void. They did not look like any ships Yuna had ever seen. They did not match any design from any known species. "The Devourers," Yuna whispered. Dohan came to stand beside her. His face went pale. "That is not possible. The Devourers are just a story. A legend, but they were not a legend. They were very real, and they were attacking. The Devourers were an ancient enemy. Long before humans had even learned to make fire, the Devourers had swept through the galaxy. They destroyed everything in their path. They did not negotiate. They did not show mercy. They simply consumed. Entire civilizations had been wiped out. Hundreds of species had gone extinct. It had taken the combined might of every surviving race to push them back to the edge of the galaxy. That was 10,000 years ago. Everyone thought they were gone forever. They were wrong. The station shook again as weapons fire struck its shields. Yuna could see explosions blooming in the darkness outside. The Council's defense fleet was trying to fight back, but their ships were small and few. They had not been built for war. The galaxy had been at peace for so long that no one remembered how to fight. We need to get to the emergency shelters, Dahun said. He grabbed Yuna's arm. No, Yuna said. She pulled away from him. We need to get to the communication center. Why? Who are you going to call? The council fleet is already here, and they are losing. Yuna looked at him with fire in her eyes. I am going to call someone who knows how to win a war. They ran through the corridors of the station. All around them, aliens were screaming and running in panic. Some were injured. Some were crying. The beautiful station that had stood for 3,000 years was falling apart around them. The communication center was in the middle of the station. It was a large room filled with machines that could send messages across the entire galaxy. When Yuna and Dawn arrived, they found it almost empty. The workers had already fled. Yuna sat down at one of the control panels. Her hands were shaking, but she forced herself to focus. She knew what she needed to do. There was an old protocol, something that had been created long ago and never used. It was called the Galactic Emergency Beacon. It was designed to call for help from anywhere in the galaxy. It would reach every ship, every station, and every planet that had the technology to receive it, including Earth. You cannot be serious, Dahung said when he realized what she was doing. Earth? You want to call Earth? They are the only ones who can help us, Yuna said. The Council will never accept help from humans. They would rather die. Yuna stopped typing and looked at him. Then they will die. But I will not stand here and do nothing while billions of innocent beings are slaughtered. If the Council is too proud to accept help, that is their problem. I am asking anyway. She turned back to the console and entered the final codes. The beacon activated. A pulse of energy shot out from the station and spread across the stars. It was a cry for help, a desperate plea, and it was heading straight for the one world that the galaxy feared most, Earth. Far away, on the other side of the galaxy, the signal reached a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star. It was received by a network of listening stations that had been built over 200 years. These stations were always watching, always waiting. They knew that someday, something like this might happen. Within minutes, the message was decoded and sent to the highest levels of the Earth Defense Command. Admiral Taiho was sleeping when his communicator buzzed. He was an old man now, with gray hair and deep lines on his face. He had served in the military for over 40 years. He had fought pirates, rebels, and rogue states. He had commanded ships in battles that most people had never heard of. But for the last 10 years, he had done nothing but wait. He looked at the message on his screen. His eyes went wide. It is finally happening, he said to himself. He got out of bed and put on his uniform. It was the black and silver uniform of the Earth War Fleet. He had not worn it in a long time. It still fit perfectly. Within an hour, Admiral Taiho was standing on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Dawn. It was the largest warship ever built by humans. It was 2 kilometers long, covered in heavy armor, and armed with weapons that could crack a planet in half. It had been designed for one purpose: to fight wars that could not be won by anything less. Around the Crimson Dawn, hundreds of other ships were gathering. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and battleships. The entire Earth War fleet was coming together for the first time in 50 years. 300 warships, each one a masterpiece of human engineering and violence. The captains of these ships were connecting to a shared communication channel. Their faces appeared on the screens of the bridge. Some were young, some were old. Some were men, some were women. But they all had the same look in their eyes. They were ready. You have all seen the message, Admiral Taiho said. The Galactic Council is under attack. The enemy is the Devourers. You know who they are. You know what they have done. For 10,000 years, The galaxy has lived in fear of their return. That fear has now become reality. He paused and looked at the faces on the screens. The galaxy has never wanted our help. They have treated us like animals. They have locked us away and pretended we do not exist. But today, they are asking for help. Today, they need us. Captain Minji spoke up. She was a small woman with short hair and cold eyes. Her ship, the Iron Fang, was one of the fastest destroyers in the fleet. Why should we help them? They have done nothing but hurt us. Admiral Taiho nodded slowly. You are right to be angry. I am angry too. But this is not about revenge. This is not about making them pay for what they have done. This is about who we are. He stepped forward, and his voice became stronger. We are human. We have fought wars for longer than most species have existed. We have killed each other over land, over ideas, over nothing at all. The galaxy looks at us and sees monsters. Maybe they are right, but monsters have their uses. He pointed at the star map that showed the location of the Council Station. Out there, billions of innocent beings are about to die. Children, families, people who have never held a weapon in their lives. They are going to be slaughtered because the galaxy forgot how to fight. We did not forget. We never could. Captain Minji was silent for a moment. Then she smiled, a thin and dangerous smile. When do we leave? Now, Admiral Taiho said. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump. We are going to war. The fleet began to move. Engines roared to life. Weapons systems activated. Shields powered up. 300 wars. Admiral Taiho stood on the bridge of the Crimson Dawn as the ship traveled through hyperspace. The view outside the windows was a blur of blue and white light. It was beautiful in a strange way. Most people found hyperspace travel uncomfortable. The human body was not designed to move faster than light. But Taiho had made this journey so many times that he no longer noticed. His crew worked silently around him. They were checking systems, monitoring power levels, and preparing for battle. Every person on this ship knew what they were flying toward. They knew they might not come back. And yet, none of them complained. None of them asked to be left behind. That was what made humans different. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the smartest. They did not have special powers or abilities. But they had something that no other species could match. They were willing to die for things they believed in. Captain Sora walked up beside the Admiral. She was his second in command, a tall woman with broad shoulders and a face that rarely smiled. She had been with Taiho for 15 years. She knew him better than anyone. The fleet reports all ships ready for combat, she said. We will exit hyperspace in 6 hours. Good, Taiho said. What about the soldiers? They are preparing as we speak. General Juan has them running drills in the training halls. He says they will be ready for ground combat if needed. Taiho nodded. He had expected nothing less. General Juan was one of the best ground commanders Earth had ever produced. If anyone could lead troops against the Devourers, it was him. Has there been any more communication from the Council Station? Taiho asked. Ori shook her head. Nothing. The last signal we received was the emergency beacon. After that, silence. This worried Taiho. Silence usually meant one of two things. Either the communication systems had been destroyed, or everyone who could send a message was dead. He hoped it was the first option. Sir, said one of the officers in a nearby console. We are receiving a transmission from Earth Command. Taiho turned. Put it through. The main screen flickered, and the face of President Hyun-soo appeared. He was a middle-aged man with a calm expression and tired eyes. Being the leader of Earth was not an easy job, especially when most of the galaxy wanted nothing to do with your planet. Admiral Taiho, the president said. "I wanted to speak with you before you arrive at the station." "Of course, sir. What do you need?" The president paused for a moment. He seemed to be choosing his words carefully. "I need you to understand something. The Galactic Council has not officially asked for our help. The emergency beacon was activated by a single ambassador. We do not know if the Council actually wants us there." Taiho frowned. "With respect, sir, does it matter? They are being attacked. People are dying." "I know, and I agree with you. That is why I am letting the fleet continue. But I need you to be careful. The political situation is complicated. If we go in and save them, they might thank us. Or they might accuse us of using the crisis to expand our influence. Either way, we need to be smart about this." "I understand," Taiho said. "We will save as many lives as we can, and we will try not to make things worse." The president smiled slightly. "That is all I ask. Good luck, Admiral. Bring your people home safe." The screen went dark. Taiho stood there for a moment, thinking about what the president had said. He knew the man was right. The galaxy did not trust humans. Even if they saved millions of lives today, there would still be those who saw them as the enemy. But Taiho did not care about politics. He cared about doing the right thing. And right now, the right thing was to stop the Devourers and protect the innocent. "Captain Sora," he said, "call a meeting of all ship commanders. I want everyone connected in 1 hour." "Yes, sir." 1 hour later, the faces of nearly 300 captains filled the screens of the bridge. They were a diverse group. Some were old veterans like Taiho. Others were young officers who had never seen real combat. But they all shared the same determination. Taiho looked at them all and began to speak. "In 5 hours, we will arrive at the Galactic Council Station. By now, you have all read the reports. The enemy is the Devourers. They are not like any enemy we have faced before. They do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They exist only to destroy." He paused to let his words sink in. "Our weapons are powerful, but we do not know how effective they will be against Devourer ships. We have no intelligence on their tactics, their numbers, or their weaknesses. We are going in blind." Captain Minji spoke up from her screen. "Then we do what we always do. We adapt. We overcome. We win." Several other captains nodded in agreement. Taiho felt a small spark of pride. These were good people. Brave people. They deserved a leader who would not waste their lives. "Here is the plan," Taiho said. "When we exit hyperspace, we will form a defensive line between the station and the Devourer fleet. Our carriers will launch fighters to engage enemy small craft. Our cruisers will provide covering fire. Our battleships will target the largest enemy vessels." He brought up a diagram on the shared screen. "Captain Minji, your destroyers will be our scouts. You will move ahead of the main fleet and gather information. I need to know what we are dealing with as quickly as possible." "Understood," Minji said. "General Juan," Taiho continued, "your ground forces will stand ready for boarding operations. If we can capture an enemy ship, we do it. If the station needs defending from the inside, your soldiers will handle it." General Juan appeared on one of the screens. He was a broad man with a shaved head and a scar running down the left side of his face. He looked like someone who had seen too many battles and was ready for many more. "My soldiers are ready," Juan said. "We have trained for situations like this our entire lives." "Good," Taiho said. "One more thing. I know many of you have questions about why we are helping the Galactic Council. They have not been kind to us. They have treated Earth like a disease that needs to be contained. Some of you might think they deserve whatever happens to them." He looked directly at the cameras. "I will not pretend that I have forgiven them. I have not. But out there, on that station, there are millions of beings who have done nothing wrong. There are children who have never harmed anyone. There are families who just want to live their lives in peace. They did not choose to fear us. They were taught to fear us. And today, we are going to show them that they were wrong. He took a deep breath. Today, we are going to prove that humanity is not a threat to the galaxy. We are its protectors. We are its warriors. We are the ones who will stand between the innocent and the darkness. That is who we are. That is who we have always been. The captains were silent for a moment. Then, one by one, they began to nod. Some even saluted. Taiho had given them a purpose. He had reminded them why they had joined the military in the first place. All ships, maintain course and prepare for combat, Taiho ordered. We arrive in 5 hours. I will see you all on the other side. The screens went dark as the captains returned to their duties. Taiho stood alone on the bridge, looking out at the swirling colors of hyperspace. He was an old man. He had seen many battles. He had lost many friends. Part of him wondered if this would be his last mission, but another part of him, a deeper part, felt alive in a way he had not felt in years. This was what he was born to do. This was why humans existed. Not to conquer, not to destroy, but to fight for those who could not fight for themselves. Captain Sora returned to his side. The fleet is ready, sir. Morale is high. Good, Taiho said. Tell the crew to get some rest. They will need their strength. Sora hesitated. What about you, sir? When did you last sleep? Taiho smiled slightly. I will sleep when the battle is over. He walked to the front of the bridge and looked out at the stars rushing past. Somewhere ahead, millions of people were waiting for help. They did not know it was coming. They did not even know to hope. But help was on the way. 300 ships. 2 million soldiers. The most powerful military force humanity had ever assembled. All of it was heading toward a single point in space, ready to fight an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for longer than humans had existed. The Devourers thought they had won. They thought the galaxy was helpless. They had forgotten about the small blue planet on the edge of the spiral arm. They had forgotten about the quarantined world. They had forgotten about humans. They were about to remember Dot in the medical bay of the Crimson Dawn. Dr. Jiwoo was preparing her staff for the incoming casualties. She was a small woman with gentle hands and sharp eyes. She had spent her entire career saving lives. Today, she knew she would be tested like never before. We have enough supplies for approximately 10,000 wounded, she told her team. I want triage stations set up in every corridor leading to the bay. No one waits. Everyone gets treated. Her assistant, a young man named Minsu, looked worried. What if there are more than 10,000? Jiwoo met his eyes. Then we find more supplies. We do not give up on anyone. Understood? Minsu nodded. Understood. In the fighter bay, pilots were running final checks on their ships. The fighters were small, fast, and deadly. Each one was equipped with enough firepower to destroy a small building. There were 500 of them on the Crimson Dawn alone. Lieutenant Yunjin climbed into her cockpit and sealed the canopy. She was one of the best pilots in the fleet. She had won every simulation and passed every test. But she had never been in a real battle. None of the younger pilots had. Captain Minji gripped the arms of her command chair as the Iron Fang prepared to exit hyperspace. Her destroyer was the fastest ship in the fleet, which meant she would be the first to see what they were facing. The first to know if they had any chance of winning. All stations report ready, said her first officer, Lieutenant Jium. He was a tall man with nervous eyes, but his voice was steady. We will exit in 10 seconds. Good, Minji said. All weapons online. Shields to maximum. The moment we are out, I want full sensor sweeps. 5 seconds. Minji took a deep breath. 3, 2, 1. The blue light of hyperspace disappeared, and normal space returned. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then the sensors began to scream. Contact. GM shouted. Multiple contacts. Hundreds of them. The main screen lit up with red dots. Each dot was an enemy ship. And there were more than Minji had ever seen in one place. Send the data to the Admiral, she ordered. He needs to see this. The Iron Fang had emerged behind a small moon, hidden from the Devourer fleet. From this position, Minji could see the entire battlefield. What she saw made her stomach turn. The Galactic Council station was still there, but it was damaged badly. Large sections were on fire. Debris floated in the space around it. The shields were completely gone, and Devourer landing craft were attached to the outer hull like parasites feeding on a dying animal. The Council's defense fleet was destroyed. Broken ships drifted in the void, some still burning. A few small vessels were trying to escape, but Devourer fighters chased them down and destroyed them one by one. There were bodies floating in space. Thousands of them. Aliens of every species, frozen in death, turning slowly in the emptiness. How many enemy ships? Minji asked quietly. GM checked his console. 432 capital ships. Approximately 2,000 smaller craft, including fighters and landing vehicles. 400 ships against their 300. Those were not good odds. But Minji had seen worse. The Admiral is receiving our data, GM reported. The fleet is preparing to exit hyperspace. Minji nodded. Move us to a better position. I want to see more of their formation. Look for weaknesses. The Iron Fang moved silently through space, using the moon as cover. Minji studied the enemy ships as they passed on the screen. They were unlike anything she had seen before. They were black and twisted, covered in sharp edges and strange shapes. They did not look like they had been built. They looked like they had grown, like some kind of terrible organic machine. What are these things? GM whispered. Does it matter? Minji replied. They die like everything else. Behind them, space began to ripple. One by one, the ships of the Earth War fleet emerged from hyperspace. First came the destroyers, fast and deadly. Then, the cruisers, bristling with weapons. Then the carriers, launching fighters the moment they arrived. And finally, the battleships, massive mountains of metal and firepower. In the center of the formation, the Crimson Dawn appeared. It was the largest ship in the fleet, and it looked even more impressive in the light of the distant stars. Its hull was covered in weapon ports and armor plates. It looked like it had been designed by people who expected to fight gods. Admiral Taiho's voice came over the fleet communication channel. All ships, this is the Admiral. Form up according to plan. Destroyers forward. Cruisers provide cover. Carriers launch all fighters. Battleships target the largest enemy vessels. The fleet moved with perfect coordination. Years of training had prepared them for this moment. Every captain knew their role. Every crew member knew their job. They were a single organism with 300 bodies, and they were ready to fight. On the council station, Ambassador Yuna heard something she had not expected. Alarms were sounding, but they were different from before. These were not warnings of attack. These were warnings of incoming ships. She looked at Dawn. What is happening? Dohan ran to a damaged console and tried to bring up the external sensors. The screen flickered, but finally showed an image. What they saw made both of them stop breathing. Ships. Hundreds of ships. But not Devourer ships. These were different. They were gray and silver, covered in weapons and armor. They flew in tight formations, moving together like wolves hunting prey. Is that? Dohan could not finish the sentence. Earth, Yuna said. Earth came. Tears began to fall from her eyes. She had hoped, but she had not truly believed. She had sent a message into the void and prayed that someone would answer. And now, against all odds, her prayer had been answered. The Devourers noticed the new arrivals. Their ships began to turn, moving away from the station to face the human fleet. They had not expected this. They had scanned this region of space. They knew that the local species were weak and peaceful. They knew there was no threat. They did not know about Earth. Admiral Taiho watched the enemy fleet reform. They are changing their formation. They are going to engage us. Good, said Captain Sora. That means they are moving away from the station. The survivors have a chance. Captain Minji, Taiho said into the communication channel. What can you tell me about their ships? Minji's face appeared on the screen. Their armor is thick, but I am seeing energy signatures that suggest power cores in the center of each vessel. If we can hit those cores, the ship should go down. Any weaknesses in their formation? They are bunching together. They seem to prefer close-range combat. Our long-range weapons should give us an advantage. Taiho nodded. All ships, adjust targeting. Focus fire on power cores. Maintain distance and use our range. The first shots were fired by the human cruisers. Beams of energy crossed the darkness of space and struck the Devourer ships. The enemy shields flickered, but held. The Devourers returned fire with weapons that shot balls of purple energy. These balls exploded against the human shields, causing damage but not breaking through. Their weapons are powerful, Sora observed. Our shields will not last forever. Then we need to end this quickly, Taiho replied. All battleships, fire main cannons. The 8 battleships in the fleet pointed their largest weapons at the enemy. These cannons were the most powerful weapons humanity had ever built. They had been designed to destroy asteroids that threatened Earth. Now, they were being used against living targets. 8 beams of pure destruction shot across space. They hit the Devourer formation like the fist of an angry god. 3 enemy ships exploded instantly. 2 more lost power and began to drift. The remaining ships scattered, their formation broken. Direct hits, Sora reported. Enemy casualties confirmed. On the Devourer command ship, the creature that led the fleet was confused. This was not supposed to happen. The species of this galaxy were weak. They had no warriors. They had no weapons that could threaten the Devourers. The scouts had confirmed this thousands of years ago. But these ships were different. These ships were dangerous. The Devourer commander sent a signal to its fleet. Focus on the newcomers. Destroy them all. The battle began in earnest. Human fighters engaged Devourer fighters in spinning, twisting combat. Explosions lit up the darkness like a field of deadly flowers. Ships on both sides were destroyed, their crews killed in moments. Lieutenant Yunjin flew her fighter through the chaos. She had trained for this in simulations, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality. Enemy fighters screamed past her, firing their weapons. She dodged, spun, and returned fire. Got one, she shouted as her target exploded. Good shot, Sejun said over the radio. I have 2 on my tail. Need help. Yunjin turned hard and accelerated. She saw Sejun's fighter ahead, with 2 Devourer craft chasing him. She lined up her weapons and fired. One of the enemy fighters broke apart. The other tried to turn, but Sejun was faster. He destroyed it with a single burst. Thanks, Sejun said. Thank me later. We have more coming. On the station, the Devourers who had boarded the structure stopped their advance. They received orders from their commander. Return to the ships. A new enemy had arrived. Yuna watched from her hiding spot as the Devourer soldiers moved back toward their landing craft. They were leaving. They were actually leaving. Are we going to be okay? Doan asked. Yuna did not answer. The battle was still being fought outside. The human fleet was buying them time, but she did not know how long they could hold. In the space between the fleets, the fighting grew more intense. Human ships were taking damage. Several destroyers had been destroyed. A cruiser was on fire, its crew desperately trying to control the flames. But the Devourers were suffering too. More than 50 of their ships had been destroyed or disabled. Admiral Taiho made a decision. Captain Minji, take your destroyers and hit their flank. Draw some of them away from the main force. Understood, Minji replied. The Iron Fang and its sister ships broke away from the main formation. They accelerated to maximum speed and curved around the side of the Devourer fleet. The enemy saw them coming and sent ships to intercept. That was exactly what Taiho wanted. Now, he ordered, all battleships, concentrate fire on their command ship. The 8 battleships turned their weapons on the largest Devourer vessel. It was in the center of their formation, protected by layers of other ships. But those other ships had moved to chase the destroyers. The command ship, W. Commander Junho stood in the assault bay of the Crimson Dawn, surrounded by 500 of Earth's best soldiers. They were wearing heavy combat armor and carrying weapons that could cut through steel. They were ready for war. Listen up, Junho shouted over the noise of the ship's engines. The Admiral has given us a mission. There is a Devourer carrier disabled, but not destroyed. We are going to board it. The soldiers looked at each other. Boarding an enemy ship was one of the most dangerous missions possible. They would be fighting in tight spaces against an enemy they did not fully understand. Many of them would not come back. Junho saw their hesitation. He understood it. He felt it too, but he could not show it. I know what you are thinking, he said. Why should we risk our lives for people who hate us? Why should we die for aliens who treated us like animals? He walked among his soldiers, looking each one in the eye. I will tell you why. Because that is what makes us human. We do not fight because we expect thanks. We do not die because we want rewards. We fight because it is right. We die because others cannot. That is the difference between us and them. He pointed at the door that led to the transport ships. Out there, millions of innocent beings are waiting to see if they live or die. They have given up hope. They have accepted their fate. But we do not accept it. We are going to change it. He raised his weapon. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone who cannot fight for themselves. The soldiers raised their weapons in response. For Earth. They shouted. The transport ships launched from the Crimson Dawn and flew toward the disabled Devourer carrier. Around them, the battle still raged. Human and Devourer ships exchanged fire. Explosions lit up space. Debris flew in every direction. Lieutenant Yunjin saw the transports leaving and switched to radio channel. Transport Group, this is Fighter Wing 7. We will provide cover. She led her squadron toward the transports. Devourer fighters tried to intercept, but Yunjin and her pilots shot them down. One after another, enemy craft exploded under their fire. Clear path ahead, Yunjin reported. Get to that carrier. The transports reached the disabled Devourer ship and attached to its hull. Cutting tools burned through the alien metal, creating entry points. Within minutes, the first soldiers were inside. Commander Junho was the first through the hole. He landed in a dark corridor that smelled like rotting meat. The walls were covered in strange organic material, as if the ship was alive. Spread out, he ordered. Teams of 4. Find the engine room and plant explosives. We are going to blow this thing from the inside. His soldiers moved through the ship like ghosts. They had trained for operations like this their entire careers. Every corner was checked. Every shadow was watched. They moved quickly but carefully. The first contact came at an intersection. A Devourer soldier appeared from the darkness. It was tall and thin, with 4 arms and a head that had no eyes. It made a terrible screaming sound and charged. Private Yeren fired her weapon. The energy beam hit the creature in the chest and burned a hole through it. The Devourer fell, but 2 more appeared behind it. "Contact!" Yeren shouted. The corridor exploded into violence. Human soldiers fired in controlled bursts. Devourers screamed and charged with claws and teeth. Bodies fell on both sides. Blood, both red and black, covered the floor. Junho grabbed a Devourer by its throat and threw it against the wall. Another soldier finished it with a shot to the head. The fight lasted less than 30 seconds, but it felt like hours. "Report," Junho demanded. "2 wounded, none dead," said Sergeant Bora. "We can keep moving." "Then move." "We do not have much time." They pushed deeper into the ship. The resistance grew heavier. The Devourers knew they were there, and they were sending everything they had to stop them. In another part of the ship, a team led by Lieutenant Sujin found the engine room. It was a massive chamber filled with pulsing organic machinery. In the center was a core of pure energy, spinning slowly and giving off waves of heat. "Set the charges," Sujin ordered. "Maximum yield." Her team began placing explosives around the core. They worked quickly and efficiently. Every second they spent in this room was a second the Devourers could use to find them. A noise came from the entrance. Sujin turned and saw a dozen Devourers pouring into the room. "Cover me," she shouted. "I need 30 more seconds." Her soldiers formed a line and opened fire. The Devourers fell in waves, but more kept coming. It was like fighting a river. No matter how many you killed, more appeared. Private Hojin took a claw to the shoulder. He screamed but kept fighting. Corporal Miri was grabbed by 2 Devourers and dragged toward the door. Her teammates shot the creatures, but not before they had broken her arm. 20 seconds! Sujin yelled. The fighting grew more desperate. Soldiers were running out of ammunition. Some switched to blades and fought hand to hand. The Devourers were strong, but humans were determined. 10 seconds! A Devourer broke through the line and charged at Sujin. She drew her sidearm and fired 3 shots into its face. It fell at her feet, still twitching. "Done!" she shouted. "Fall back." Everyone fall back. The team retreated, fighting their way through the corridors. Behind them, a timer counted down. When they reached the transport, only 8 of the original 12 remained. "Go." Sujin ordered the pilot. "Get us out of here." The transport detached and flew away from the carrier. Seconds later, the explosives detonated. The engine core overloaded, and the entire ship exploded in a massive fireball. The shock wave pushed the transport forward, but it held together. Sujin looked back at the burning wreckage. "For Earth," she whispered. On the Crimson Dawn, Admiral Taiho received the report. "Devour carrier destroyed, sir. Commander Junho's team is returning." Taiho allowed himself a small smile. "Good. How is the battle going?" Captain Sora checked the displays. "We have destroyed over 200 enemy ships. Our losses are 53 vessels. The Devour formation is breaking apart." It was working. The plan was working. But they were not finished yet. "Press the attack," Taiho ordered. "Do not give them time to regroup." The human fleet pushed forward. Destroyers darted through the enemy formation, striking targets and retreating before they could be hit. Cruisers pounded the larger Devour ships with concentrated fire. Battleships used their massive weapons to destroy anything that tried to rally the enemy forces. Captain Minji led her destroyers into the heart of the Devour fleet. She had lost 2 ships from her group, but the survivors were fighting like demons. "Iron Fang, target that cruiser on the left," she ordered. "It is trying to organize the smaller ships." Her weapons officer fired. The Devourer cruiser's shields collapsed and its hull cracked open. Secondary explosions tore through the vessel until nothing was left but debris. "Target eliminated," the weapons officer reported. "Find the next one." On the station, the surviving members of the Galactic Council had gathered in what remained of the main hall. They watched the battle through damaged view screens, barely able to believe what they were seeing. Councillor Varric, an ancient being with blue skin and 6 eyes, shook his head slowly. How is this possible? The humans were supposed to be primitives. Their technology was supposed to be centuries behind ours. Ambassador Yuna stood nearby. She had made her way to the council chamber to provide a human perspective. Now, she spoke up. "You never understood us," she said. "You looked at our history and saw only war. You saw the violence and the death, and you decided we were dangerous. But you missed the other side." She pointed at the screen where human ships were still fighting. "We fought those wars because we cared. We killed each other over ideas, over beliefs, over things we thought were worth dying for. That passion, that willingness to sacrifice everything, that is what makes us dangerous. Not our technology, not our weapons, our hearts." Councillor Varric was silent for a long moment. Then he bowed his head. "We were wrong. We were so wrong." "Yes," Yuna agreed. "You were. But there will be time for apologies later. Right now, you need to focus on surviving." The battle continued for another 2 hours. Slowly, the tide turned completely in humanity's favor. The Devourer fleet was reduced to less than 100 ships. Then 50. Then 20. The remaining Devourers tried to retreat. They turned away from the station and accelerated toward the edge of the system. But the human fleet was faster. "Do not let them escape," Admiral Taiho commanded. "If even one ship gets away, they will return with more. We end this today." Captain Minji's destroyers chased down the fleeing ships. Lieutenant Yunjin's fighters swept through the enemy formation, destroying anything that moved. The battleships fired their long-range weapons, picking off targets from across the system. One by one, the Devourer ships were destroyed. When the last one exploded, a silence fell over the battlefield. The weapons stopped firing. The engines stopped screaming. For a moment, there was only the quiet of space. Then the cheering started. On the Crimson Dawn, crew members embraced and shouted with joy. On the fighters, pilots pumped their fists and screamed into their radios. On the transports, soldiers who had fought hand-to-hand with monsters allowed themselves to cry. They had won. Admiral Taiho sat in his command chair, feeling the weight of what they had accomplished. They had faced an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had fought against superior numbers with weapons they had never tested. And they had won. But victory came at a cost. 53 ships destroyed. Over 3 days had passed since the battle ended. The space around the Galactic Council Station was no longer filled with fire and death. Instead, it was filled with human ships working to repair the damage. Engineers crawled across the station's hull, fixing broken systems. Medical shuttles moved between the fleet and the station, carrying wounded in both directions. Supply vessels brought food, water, and medicine to the survivors. Admiral Taiho stood in a temporary command center that had been set up in one of the station's undamaged sections. He was tired. He had not slept more than a few hours since the fighting stopped. But there was too much work to do. Captain Sora entered the room and handed him a tablet. "Final casualty report, sir." Taiho looked at the numbers. 53 ships destroyed. 32,417 dead. Another 15,000 wounded, some of whom would never fully recover. Each number represented a person with a name, a family, and a story that had been cut short. "Have the letters been sent?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Every family has been notified." Taiho nodded slowly. It was the part of command he hated most. Telling parents that their children would not come home. Telling partners that they would never see their loved ones again. No amount of training could make that burden lighter. "What about the station?" he asked. "Repairs are proceeding ahead of schedule. The council estimates the main sections will be functional within 2 weeks. Full restoration will take several months. And the survivors?" Sora hesitated. There were 4.2 million beings on this station when the attack began. 3.1 million survived. Over 1 million dead. An entire city's worth of people erased in a matter of hours. Taiho felt sick, but he kept his face steady. "Continue the rescue operations," he said. "No one gets left behind." A knock came at the door. Ambassador Yuna entered, followed by several members of the Galactic Council. Councilor Varek was at the front of the group, walking slowly with the help of a cane. He looked older than he had before the battle, as if the experience had aged him decades in just a few days. "Admiral Taiho," Varek said. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." Taiho gestured for them to sit. "What can I do for you?" Varek looked at the other council members, then back at Taiho. "We have been discussing what happened here. The attack, the battle, the rescue. We have come to certain conclusions. I am listening. For 200 years, we have treated humanity as a threat to be contained. We looked at your history and saw violence. We looked at your weapons and saw danger. We decided that the safest thing for the galaxy was to keep you isolated and controlled." The old alien's voice grew heavy with emotion. "We were fools. Arrogant, short-sighted fools. While we were busy being afraid of you, we forgot how to protect ourselves. We grew soft and weak. When the Devourers came, we had nothing. No weapons. No warriors. No hope." He looked directly at Taiho. "And then you came. You answered a call that we never expected anyone to hear. You flew across the galaxy to save people who had spent centuries treating you like animals. You lost thousands of your own to protect strangers who had done nothing but hurt you." Tears began to form in the alien's eyes. "I do not understand it. I do not understand how anyone could do what you did. But I know that we were wrong about you. We were so terribly wrong." The room was silent for a moment. Then Taiho spoke. "We are not saints, Counselor. We have done terrible things in our history. The violence you saw was real. The wars were real. The death was real. You were not wrong to be cautious." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the damaged station. "But you only saw part of us. You saw the darkness, but you missed the light. Yes, humans kill. We kill with efficiency and creativity that terrifies other species. But we also love with that same intensity. We protect with that same passion. We fight for our families, our friends, and our beliefs." He turned back to face the council. "When we received your distress signal, there was not a single person in the fleet who questioned whether we should answer it. Not one. We knew it would be dangerous. We knew many of us would die. But we came anyway, because that is who we are." He pointed at Ambassador Yuna. "She is who we are. She spent years fighting for a place in your council, being rejected and insulted at every turn. And when the attack came, her first thought was to call for help. Not for herself. For you." Yuna looked down, embarrassed by the attention. "We are complicated," Taiho continued. "We are capable of great evil and great good, sometimes at the same time. But one thing we will never do is stand by while innocent people suffer. That is not in our nature. It never has been." Counselor Varek nodded slowly. He seemed to be processing everything Taiho had said. "Admiral, The Council has made a decision. We would like to formally invite Earth to join the Galactic Council as a full member. All restrictions on human trade, travel, and settlement will be lifted immediately. Your people will have the same rights and privileges as any other species. Taiho was not surprised. He had expected something like this, but hearing the words still affected him in ways he had not anticipated. I cannot accept that invitation, he said. I am a soldier, not a diplomat. That decision must be made by President Hyun-soo and the Earth government. Of course, Varric agreed. We will send a formal request through proper channels. But I wanted you to know first. I wanted you to understand that things are going to change. Change is good, Taiho said, as long as it is change in the right direction. The council members left, leaving Taiho alone with Sora and Yuna. The Admiral sat down heavily in his chair, suddenly feeling every one of his years. You did it, Yuna said. You actually did it. You changed everything. Taiho shook his head. I did not do anything. The soldiers did it. The pilots did it. The engineers and medics and everyone else who worked to make this happen. I just gave the orders. That is not true, Sora said. You gave us more than orders. You gave us a reason to fight. You reminded us what it means to be human. Taiho looked at her for a long moment, then smiled slightly. Maybe, but the war is not over. The Devourers are still out there. The ones we fought were just a scouting force. When they realize what happened here, they will send more. Many more. Then we will be ready, Yuna said. This time, we will not be alone. 1 week later, Admiral Taiho stood on the bridge of the Crimson Dawn as it prepared to leave the station. The repairs were progressing well. The council was functioning again. Human aid workers and military personnel had been stationed throughout the station to help with reconstruction. President Hyun-soo appeared on the main screen. Admiral, I wanted to thank you personally before you departed. What you accomplished was remarkable. Thank you, sir. What happened with the council's invitation? The president smiled. We accepted. Earth is now a full member of the Galactic Council. The first human representative will be appointed next month. I assume you will choose someone with diplomatic experience. Actually, I was thinking of someone who has already proven herself. Ambassador Yuna will be Earth's representative on the High Council. Taiho felt a surge of satisfaction. Yuna had earned that position through years of dedication and sacrifice. No one deserved it more. She will do well, he said. I know she will. Now, what about you? You have earned a rest. Would you like to return to Earth? Taiho thought about it. Home. Real coffee. Green grass and blue skies. It had been so long since he had seen any of those things. Not yet, he said finally. There is still work to be done. The Devourers will return, and we need to be ready. I want to start working with the Council fleet to improve their defenses. The president nodded. I expected you would say that. Very well. You have full authority to coordinate with the Council on military matters. Keep me informed. Yes, sir. The screen went dark. Taiho turned to Captain Sora. Set course for the Council Military Command Center. We have a lot of work to do. Yes, sir. As the Crimson Dawn began to move away from the station, Taiho walked to the front of the bridge and looked out at the stars. So much had changed in such a short time. 2 weeks ago, humanity had been outcasts. Now, they were heroes. 2 weeks ago, the galaxy had feared them. Now, the galaxy needed them. He thought about all the people who had died to make this moment possible. The soldiers who had given their lives. The crew members who had worked until they collapsed. The families back on Earth who would never see their loved ones again. He hoped he had done them justice. He hoped that their sacrifice had meant something. Behind him, a communication came through. It was a message from Ambassador Yuna. "Admiral, I just wanted to say thank you." "For everything?" Tai-Ho smiled. "You are the one who started all of this. You activated the beacon. You called for help. I called. You answered. That is what we do," Tai-Ho said. "We answer." He looked back at the stars. "Earth remembers being alone. For 200 years, we were isolated and forgotten. We know what it feels like to have no one to turn to. We know the fear and the despair of facing the darkness by ourselves." His voice grew stronger. "No one else will ever feel that way. Not while we exist. Not while there is a single human ship flying through space. The galaxy may not have wanted us as friends, but they will have us as protectors. They will have us as guardians. 30,000